Welcome everyone to our workshop where I'm going to be talking all about how to lose fat and build muscle. And I've said AKA get toned because that's often what we think about when we think about lose fat, build muscle after 40. So what works and what doesn't, I'm going to break it down for you step by step, all the strategies so you know exactly what you need to do and what you, more importantly, don't need to do after 40 to get those results. All right, so we know why we're here. This talk, obviously, fat loss after 40, how to lose fat and build muscle, aka get toned the right way after 40. We're doing this now, early January, because this is the time of the year when I've said before, we're at our most vulnerable, I feel, in terms of being sucked into the quick fixes and the fads and the promises to get your results fast. And I want to make sure that you are doing things the right way, that we don't end up spinning our wheels time and time again every January going, quick, I've got to solve this problem. If you want to lose some body fat, I want to do this in the next 3 or 4 weeks, like this race. And then we get sucked into these things that don't work. And you end up spinning your wheels time and time again, wasting your time and your money and your energy. So I want to definitely avoid that. Let me know if any of these statements resonate with you. So what used to work in your 20s and 30s is no longer working. You feel like a stranger in your own body. You might be eating like a bird, what feels like eating air and salad, exercising like crazy, but your pants just keep getting tighter. And maybe you suspect or that changing hormones, you might be going through perimenopause, or you're about to, or you might be postmenopausal, but you know that in some way, shape, or form, hormones are playing a part, but you feel completely overwhelmed and confused about what to do about it. Today, we're going to learn why that is, why all of these things might be true, and what it is you can do about it. So you may or may not know, this probably came as a bit of a surprise to me when I read this years and years ago, that weight gain that we often associate with our 40s and 50s and beyond is not due to a slowing metabolism. Our metabolism doesn't slow down in and of itself just because of age, but a changing hormones and a changing lifestyle can directly or indirectly affect our body composition. So the average age of menopause, the average age is 51. So menopause itself, one day of your life. It's the day that is exactly 12 months since your last period. Everything after that day is postmenopause. But perimenopause, which is a real, I think I've heard perimenopause more in the last year or two than I have in my whole life combined. It's a real buzzword, which is great. Like, it's great that we're all being more educated and know more about it. But perimenopause can start 7 to 10 years out from menopause. And this is often the time when symptoms are at their worst. It's a bit of a time of hormonal chaos, like estrogen and progesterone and testosterone all over the place. They're up and down. So it's a bit of chaos happening there. One of the things I like to say to women, to my clients, is that, you probably know this, but menopause is inevitable. None of us are going to escape from that. But the suffering part that we often associate with it or hear about is not. We're going to spend a third to up to a half of our lives in our menopausal years, including perimenopause. And that's far too long to be wasted feeling like crap. Here's just a few of the lovely symptoms that can be associated with perimenopause and menopause. I call this a bit of a laundry list. Honestly, this is a fraction of what can happen, right? Persistent weight gain. So I put that at the top for a reason. Obviously, it's only one of many symptoms that can be associated with perimenopause and menopause. You might experience none of these. You might experience one or two. You might experience 20. It's a very individual experience for everybody. But weight gain I've put at the top there because the struggle to lose weight, even though it's just one of many symptoms, for a lot of women, it's a bit of the canary in the coal mine. It's the first sign that makes them think what is going on that they can't attribute to other things like stress or busyness or tiredness. Like a lot of the other things you can put aside and be like, oh, it's because of this or that or the other thing. But when you start to gain weight, like seemingly inexplicably, like nothing has changed, your food and your exercise are all the same, but you're gaining weight no matter what you do, then that is often the first sign that perimenopause has kicked in. So that is what makes people sit up and pay attention. Also, the other reason we're talking about this is the beauty of tackling weight gain being one of the symptoms of perimenopause and menopause is that when you address the root causes that are causing the weight gain, particularly the dangerous belly fat, the visceral fat that we hear about around our organs, it can also have a positive impact on a lot of these other symptoms. So this double win. So you address the weight gain, then a lot of women will find that a lot of their other symptoms are alleviated as well. So it's win-win. Thankfully for me, when all this started, I had a really great sort of health practitioners who were on top of this stuff. That's not the case for everyone, and that's definitely something that's a priority to me, to make sure everyone's is able to advocate for themselves as well. And also for me personally, I was already obviously in the health and fitness space. My training in nutrition was already pretty good, but honestly, like, this set me down a path 6 or 7 years ago, whenever it was, to finding out as much as I could about perimenopause and menopause, the changing needs of women during this time. Which brings me to me, just very quickly. A lot of you know me already, obviously, but for those who don't know me, why should you listen to me when there's seemingly thousands of experts or self-proclaimed experts, and a lot of them contradict each other, and it's really hard to know who to believe and what to believe and who to listen to when it comes to this stuff. And that's, I think, where the confusion, the overwhelm can come in. So who am I? I'm Amy Mitchell. I'm a certified nutrition and fitness coach. I specialize in perimenopause and menopause. I am a mum of 2 teen girls, wife, business owner, and I am really super active and want to continue to be for the rest of my days. I play sport, netball and touch football and snowboard, and I want to be the 90-year-old woman who's still lifting weights and out exercising a lot of her younger counterparts. A lot of you will know I'm the owner of Goddess Outdoor Fitness. So if you're in Sydney or if you're one of my clients, you'll know that. Obviously, I've been running that for 14 years, and I'm very lucky that I get to help women every day, from teenagers through to motherhood to menopause. I can help women in their 40s and beyond see that this is not the end of the road. This is the start of the road. This is where we get to decide what the second half of our life looks like. And although it feels like the rules are changing when it comes to our bodies and nutrition and training, that doesn't mean that we might need a different strategy, but we can still get great results. Enough about me. Why are you here? Why now? Why are you sitting here right now listening to this? Why do you want to know about this stuff now? If you've already started down this path, then fantastic. You're ahead of a lot of women when they reach this age. If you are not, that's okay. I think this is again, a bit of a cliche, but also one of my favorite quotes. Best time to start was 5 years ago, maybe even 10, maybe even 20. But if you haven't, then the second best time to start is right now. And I am really glad that you are here now, because my goal, and we're going to get stuck into the meaty stuff in just a second, is to help you feel the best you possibly can, take control of where you're at, and just see that perimenopause and menopause doesn't mean you're destined to put on weight or not feel your best, and that you can really see a path to reaching your goal. So why is this? I've talked about why you're here, why I'm here. Why is what I'm going to talk about now any different to what you've heard before, what you've read, what you've seen? Like I said, there's lots of contradictory stuff out there. Like, why is this any different? So although it's true that the rules have changed and, your body doesn't respond the way it used to, it may not. Maybe it still does at the moment, but maybe you're just getting ahead of the game for when it may not. And that's due to changing hormones. But the one thing that I have learned over years and years of coaching hundreds of women over 40 is that what you really don't need right now is more stuff on your plate, and we don't need to overcomplicate this process. Although things are different, that doesn't mean they need to be more complicated. You don't need more rules. You don't need more restrictions. You need clear, concise directions combined with support and accountability that helps you get from A to B as quickly and efficiently as possible. And the other thing I just want to touch on here that's important is that sometimes it's also not as easy as just saying, just tell me what to do and I'll do it, right? Like, you give me the steps and I'll go and do it. Hands up if I will put my hand up first. Hands up if you've ever before said that, just tell me what to do and I'll do it, and then you haven't done it for whatever reason, because life gets in the way. Life's busy. If you're a woman over 40, you're probably the busiest you've ever been. If you're juggling a career and maybe kids and maybe elderly parents and all sorts of things going on, and you're super busy, and sometimes it's not just as easy to say, here's what to do, and you'll go do it. Sometimes you need help to do that. I want to give you a quick example of what I mean. One of my clients, Kate, who is an amazing woman, extremely smart, has a very high pressure job, teenage kids, came to me a year or maybe a little over a year ago, close to burnout, I would say. And let me know if you can relate. Like, this burnout thing is real, right? So, if you're overstretched for a long time, then burnout is a very real possibility. Some of you may have experienced it already. So Kate was waking up exhausted every day, hadn't had a decent night's sleep in months, knew the stressors weren't going away anytime soon. And by that, the stuff that, and again, tell me if you can relate, the things that are going on in your life that are stressful, they're probably not going to disappear like magic, as much as we would like some of them to. So she knew that was not going to happen, but she also knew she needed to make changes or she'd end up in burnout again. Had some family history of health issues, didn't want to end up down that same trajectory. Also, she was a woman who had never had to worry about her weight before. And this is very common too. So you might be in your 40s or 50s, never ever had to think about your weight before, but all of a sudden, almost overnight, your pants start getting tighter. And this was happening to Kate, like carrying a bit of weight around her tummy for the first time ever. And she hadn't changed anything in terms of her nutrition, her diet or exercise. She was on top of those things pretty well, but yet her clothes were getting tighter and she was determined not to have to go out and buy a new wardrobe. But more importantly, she wanted to just be as healthy as she could and age really well as she approached menopause in her 50s. You can see the after there. After it was only 4 months into working together, she was already down 7 kilos, lost 7 centimeters off her waist. She's maintained that for over a year now. But I think more important is how she feels now. So she's sleeping so much better, has way more energy. She feels strong and healthy. And as she said to me this multiple times before, this is just how I want to feel for the rest of my life. There's no end date. This is just my life now. And she feels like so much more in control. So you might be wondering what Kate did to get to that point. And as you just heard, she's extremely busy, right? All of us are. She's been able to maintain all of this through injuries and holidays and busy periods and stressful times, etc. Not perfect by any means, but she's been able to stay the course. And I think importantly here, right, if I had said to Kate at the start of our coaching time, sure, I can get you results, I can help you lose the weight, but you need to cut out all your favorite foods, you need to eat clean, you need to eat perfectly, you need to exercise for an hour a day. You can only eat between the hours of 12 and 6. Never touch carbs or sugar or coffee or wine ever again. Those things might have worked at 29, and maybe she might have even been able to stick to them at 29. But at 49 or 50, she would have given up after a week because it would have been too restrictive and she would have ended up in a worse position. Her hormones would have tanked. She would have had no energy. She would not have been able to maintain it. So it's important that we don't do things the old way. So tell me if you can relate to the old way. I'm 46, if you're around my age or a bit younger or a bit older, you can probably relate to this. The old way, if we wanted to lose weight, was low carb, low fat, one or both, lots and lots of cardio, sleep. What even is sleep? Why is sleep important? Don't need it. Stress, again, like not even on the radar, like it has nothing to do with my weight. I'm just busy. And mindset, probably didn't even consider it when it came to weight loss. It was all just about low carb, low fat cardio. Try those tactics now, and maybe some of you already have, so you know exactly what I'm going to say, but you're going to probably end up putting on more weight, have less energy, your hormones are going to be stuffed, and you're going to be in a worse position than you are now. You might get results for the first couple of weeks or maybe even a couple of months, but in the long term, it's going to tank and it's going to come back to bite you. So the old way doesn't work anymore. We need to do things differently at 40 and beyond. And what I've learned over the years of coaching hundreds of women, spent thousands and thousands of dollars, countless hours on courses and certifications and studying, like I said, I'm obsessed with this topic, is that when it comes down to it, there are 5 big rocks, I call them big rocks, when it comes to fat loss after 40. And this is the new way. Number 1, we're going to get into these in detail. Number 1, fuel. So you need to fuel your needs. We need protein and plants at its most simple, and I'll explain what I mean by that in a minute. Number 2, training, the way we train these days is really important. It's not just about the cardio. We need strength over cardio, and we need potentially some strategic HIIT, high intensity interval training as well. Number 3, sleep. Really important. You probably know this already, but I'm going to explain why it's more important now than ever. Same with stress management is super crucial to this whole process, and your mindset is a must. The key to long-lasting change is really in your mindset, and I'm going to explain why in a minute. So let's kick off with number 1, fuel your needs. Protein and plants. This gets really simple, and when I break it down, it'll make total sense. Let's start with protein. Why is protein important? It's important for lots of reasons. You guys can read through all of these while I'm talking, but in our 20s and 30s, when we have more or less optimal levels of hormones of estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone for most of us, our metabolism's quite forgiving. We can get away with, and this is a recurring theme, we can get away with a lot more. We could, I don't know about you guys, but I lived on a diet of mostly carbs when I was in my 20s. Protein was like I didn't even really know what it was. I suppose vaguely I had a sense that it was maybe some meat as protein, but I didn't know how much I needed. And I got away with a lot more than I do now. In perimenopause and menopause, when we're in this state of hormonal chaos, our hormones are much less forgiving. And as we lose estrogen and progesterone through perimenopause and into menopause, where it drops away off a cliff altogether, our bodies become far less efficient at synthesizing protein to build muscles. Estrogen dropping down impacts all sorts of just about every system in our body, our brain, liver, skin, bone, muscle, which is why there are so many symptoms of menopause. But one of the important ones when it comes to body composition and all sorts of other health factors is muscle growth. Now, muscle and protein are really important because what we want to do if we want optimal body composition is send a really strong message to our brain that we want to fuel muscle growth and bone. We want to build muscle and bone and not store body fat. So protein is really crucial in that. You can see the other upsides of having more protein. You feel fuller, so you're less hungry and you eat less crap. It's essential in the growth and repair of muscles. As we know, we're going to talk about that in a moment too when we get to training. The highest TEF just stands for thermic effective food. So basically your body uses more energy, more calories to digest protein than it does carbs and fat. And when you're losing body fat, if that's the goal, then we want to make sure we maintain muscle mass. Now, after 40 or through perimenopause and menopause, it's much harder for the reasons I already mentioned. So we want to really prioritize maintaining that muscle. And we do that partly by consuming enough protein. And the other part is resistant training, which I'll get to in a moment. More muscle equals faster metabolism, right? So the more muscle you have, the more energy you burn at rest, the higher your metabolism is. So it's easier to lose weight, certainly easier to maintain your weight rather than putting on weight as you get older. Let's switch now to the second part of the nutrition. So protein, how much do I need? Okay, this is important because you might have a vague sense of what protein is. You can get into the nitty gritty of that. It's basically animal products. So dairy, meat, seafood, anything from an animal will have protein. And then you've got some secondary sources with things like legumes and not so much nuts and seeds, but that sort of thing. Lots of those things have protein. How much do you need? This is actually really important after 40 because most women do not get enough. Ideally, you're going to consume about 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilo of ideal body weight. I often just average that out and just say, if your ideal body weight is, say, 60 kilos, then times it by 2, you need 120 grams a day. If it's 70 kilos, times it by 2, 140 grams of protein a day. In terms of how to get that, I've got lots of free resources in my fat loss group. You can have a look there. You could Google it. Like, it's not that hard once you know what the requirements are and why. Let's go now to, and like I said, most people are not getting enough to fuel their needs, let alone build muscle. So what happens when we don't get enough protein is we end up in a catabolic state where your muscles are breaking down for energy and we're losing muscle rather than putting it on, and then we put on fat. Second part of the nutrition puzzle is plants. And I say plants because everyone knows what a plant is. When I say fiber, we might go, what has high fiber again? But all plants have fiber. So anything that comes from a plant is going to have fiber in it. Obviously, there's different amounts of fiber in different plants, but just on its very general sense, plants, very important. Why is it important? You can read through here. So it helps you manage your weight. It can lower LDL cholesterol, basically fiber will bind to the extra bad cholesterol and excrete it from your body. It's associated with reduced risk of heart disease, controls blood sugar so you don't get those ups and downs of blood sugar, ups and downs and crashes through the day, helps you balance your hormones, keeps you full. Women need 25 to 30 grams a day, and most women get nowhere near that much. Now, just going back to the protein as well and how much we need per day, I have viewed and coached a lot of women, hundreds of women. I've seen lots of food diaries. And what I find is once you start tracking it, that's the only way you really know if you're getting enough protein and fiber when it comes to those two things. And even if you're someone who eats fruit and vegetables, and not everyone does, but if you're someone who does and quite likes them, you still may not be getting as much fiber as you could possibly be getting. So important to make sure we're getting the recommended amount just for those benefits listed above. Let's switch gears now to training. So big rock number 2. Strong is the new skinny. 3 types of training we need to prioritize after 40. So number 1 is, and these really are in order of priority too, because if you're not already moving, if you're quite sedentary, just say you track your steps, if you're getting around 2, 3, 4,000 steps a day, the first thing I would say is track your steps and get more steps, get more movement in your day. That would be my number 1 priority for you. If you're already doing that, then strength training is number 2. So strength training is super important for that muscle building as well. And then third on the order of priority would be HIIT or sit. So that stands for high intensity interval training or sprint interval training. So the strength training side of things there, obviously everyone knows what steps and walking is. NEAT just stands for non-exercise activity thermogenesis, basically all of the exercise you're doing when you're not doing exercise, right? So just your general movement, like your fidgeting and your hand signals and your breathing, all of that comes into NEAT. So basically the more you can move, then the more energy you're expending through the day, and then your higher metabolism is going to go. But let's talk about strength training for a minute. For the reasons we talked about in that protein section, strength training is really important, particularly for women after 40, because we need to fight for every ounce of muscle. Now, strength training is not, no matter how hard you try, maybe if you try for years and years in a calorie surplus, you might get quote unquote bulky. You would have to really intentionally go out and try to do that. You're not going to get bulky. Just to speak to the elephant in the room, because often this is the biggest probably objection I get when it comes to women in strength training. They're like, I don't want to get too muscly. There's a great analogy that I've heard someone say before when it comes to this, is that would be like saying, so my daughter's about to start to learn to drive, that when she learns to drive, she's going to become like a race car driver. She's scared that learning to drive is going to make her become a race car driver. Like, you can't accidentally get too bulky, but what we can do is maintain the strength and muscle that we've got, and maybe, if we're really lucky, build a little bit more so that we can speed up the metabolism and improve the body composition. Strength training is important. HIIT or sit, so that high intensity interval training, if you're conditioned, if you're already quite strong and doing the other 2 things and your body is ready for it, then some high intensity interval training or sprint interval training is super effective for your cardiovascular health, which is really important. I know there's a lot of anti-cardio mentality when it comes to women over 40, but cardio has its place. It just doesn't have the fat loss powers that most women think it does. But HIIT or sit is a really effective way to do cardio with more benefits than just long, slow or moderate intensity cardio. So when we're talking about that, it's really high intensity intervals with periods of rest in between. And there's been some pretty good evidence to show that can help target visceral fat, so that fat around your organs that can be more prevalent through menopause. Those high intensity interval training sessions, the great thing about them is they're very time effective. You don't need to do them every day. You could do 2, maybe 3 times a week, and you're going to get the benefits of those. You can do other things too outside of this. I'm not saying you can't do yoga or Pilates or anything else, but these 3 things are the priority when it comes to fat loss and building muscle. Let's go to big rock number 3, my favorite one. Sleep's one of the biggest impediments for fat loss after 40 because of these reasons listed here. So 1, it affects your hormone regulation. Number 2, stress and cortisol can go up if you're not getting enough sleep. And if stress and cortisol go up, insulin goes up. So you've got this, again, blood sugar roller coaster. So if you can get the sleep right, then you can help control your appetite, your hunger hormones, your energy, all of those things there. So the energy goes down. That's not rocket science, right? But if you're not getting enough sleep, then you're probably not moving very much during the day because you just don't have the energy for it. You're dragging yourself through the mud. So your daily activity, that NEAT that we talked about, goes down. The last one, just threw that in for jokes, but I think you can all probably relate. You have no tolerance when you hadn't had enough sleep, or your quality of sleep is not great. Now, let me just take a moment to say, I know for a lot of you, sleep is going to be stuffed by your hormones, right? Perimenopause is one of the worst times for sleep, and menopause as well. So if that is the case, sometimes sleep is the number one priority. When we talk about the big rocks in terms of what's going to get you the biggest bang for your buck, for some of you, if sleep is affecting all of these things that we just spoke about, then that might be the first thing you need to focus on, getting that as optimal as you can, as quick as you can. There's lifestyle things you can change. We all know our sleep hygiene. We don't necessarily all do it. So, all of the usual things like room temperature and light and sound and switching your screens off and getting off your phone earlier at night, etc., etc. There's also some supplements that can help if all of those things are already like optimal and you've done everything you can from a sleep hygiene point of view. Supplements can help too. So there are things that we can do to help the sleep, but that can be really key for a lot of you, because for some of you, your training and your NEAT and your nutrition are all going to be impacted by poor sleep. And if that's the case, we need to focus on that first. Number 4, and this is very like sleep and stress are pretty interlinked. Managing your stress is really key. As I just spoke about with my client, Kate, that we're not always going to be able to change the source of the stress or manage the actual stressors themselves, things like work and kids and relationship and money and blah, 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 blah. But we can change our response to it. And there's different things we can do to change our stress, build that stress resilience. But again, super important part of fat loss and body composition is stress. And then final big rock is mastering your mindset. So again, like this can be one of those things that if all we think about when it comes to fat loss is just food and exercise, and we ignore this, what's probably going to happen is you're going to spin your wheels time and time again. A lot of you probably will be familiar with James Clear. Like his book, Atomic Habits, is amazing if you want something to read that's along these lines. But creating a new identity might be essential to this process for you. And one of the beauties of perimenopause and menopause is this change of kind of seasons in your life is an opportunity to create a new identity if that's needed in order to get the results that you want. To be more selfish, to put your own health and well-being and your needs first, because we have to. Because if you don't, you're going to be no good to anybody, and you're just the rest of your life is going to be this kind of downward spiral. Sorry, not to be negative, but it's really important. Like, I can't stress this enough, that putting yourself first is not selfish. It's essential in order to get the most out of the rest of your life. We get to decide how we want to live the rest of our lives. And this is like a fork in the road. So if perimenopause and menopause is seeing you go down this road that you don't want to be going down, you get to decide, no, this is the time I need to be selfish and put myself first. And that trying the quick fixes and the fad diets, and they're just papering over the cracks. We need to really get to the root cause of A, what's causing the weight gain, and B, how do we fix it? So creating a new identity is very key. That is it for me for now. So I'd love to open it up for you guys now for some Q&A.